Hello there, welcome to Showcase. What's left to say about a 17th century painting? Well, if it's Girl with a Pearl Earring, there's still much to discover. A museum in the Netherlands is showing different sides of the famous Vermeer piece as the exhibit unravels some of its mysteries with the help of science and technology. Without a doubt, Girl with a Pearl Earring by Johannes Vermeer is one of the most significant paintings of all time. Now, this 4-meter-high 3D print version of it allows people to have a deeper look and feel the texture with every tiny detail magnified. The new exhibition called Who's That Girl includes a digital presentation to show Vermeer's painting techniques and what the painting would have looked like when he finished it in 1665.
So through some research, scientific research that I led and did along with some researchers a few years ago, we found out some really exciting things about the girl. For instance, that the background used to be a green curtain and that she has eyelashes that are now no longer visible because the paints have changed over time. So one part of this exhibition is showing how the girl would have looked when she was freshly painted by Vermeer in 1665. So turning back time to see what the painting would have looked like before these changes occurred.
Researchers have also traced where the painter's pigments and colored powders originated, including cochineal from insects found in Mexico and South America, and ultramarine from Afghanistan. But they still don't know how Vermeer was able to afford some of these materials, such as a costly blue stone from Afghanistan that the artist used on the headscarf of the girl and also mixed into the shadows of the clothing.
We have very little information about his life or his materials, but there are inventories from the 1660s in Delft that show that all of these pigments would have been available, but ultramarine is not on that list, so it still remains a mystery as to how we could have paid for it.
The show runs until the beginning of the next year at the Maurits House in the center of The Hague, and although some mysteries still remain, organizers hope this show brings people closer to the Dutch master. Tunisian bagpipes are making a comeback. They first appeared at the beginning of the 20th century and were mostly played in working-class suburbs. Today, the bagpipes are incorporated into other genres, including hip-hop and jazz.
Khaled Ben Hamis has been making Tunisian bagpipes, known as Mizwad, for 30 years. There are many tricks of the trade that breathe life into the instrument.
The Mizwad must be made from natural elements. The reed, the one of good quality, comes from the seaside. The reservoir should be natural, from goatskin, while the wooden components are made by a carpenter. Otherwise, the rest are all natural. There are manufacturers who use plastic components, but those, unlike the natural ones, have no soul.
The instrument has been around since the beginning of the 20th century and has undergone many changes.
The Mizwad that I was introduced to as a child is different from the one we know today. Before, we used to make it without notes and just punch holes. On the other hand, today the Mizwad has changed a lot. Now we tune it to the right musical note. If there is a wrong note, we redo the mouthpieces.
Mizwad has been linked to a musical style that was frowned upon by authorities because of its association with alcohol, drugs, and prison, where many songs were composed. It was banned from national television until the 90s. Lately, it has been taken up by a new generation of musicians who mix it with contemporary genre such as rap, hip-hop, and jazz.
The Mizwad is gaining popularity around the world, thanks to the new generation. There are musicians from abroad who call on us to merge their music with ours and share many projects with us. I hope that the Mizwad will become known worldwide. It won't be tomorrow or the day after, but we are making progress little by little.
Montassar Jebali studied Arabic music at the Higher Institute of Music of Tunisia, where the Mizwad is not taught. But he worked hard to figure out which instruments go well with Mizwad, and hopes the bagpipes will have what he calls a well-deserved international breakthrough.
African wildlife attracts millions of foreign travelers to the continent. But an exhibition in Johannesburg explores why that mightn't be such a good idea after all.
Humans are guilty of ravaging Africa's wildlife. That's what artist and photographer Roger Ballon argues through provocative installations and multimedia works. They show the killing of elephants in the 18th century to feed the ivory trade, to the decimation of the rhino population. The exhibition, called End of the Game, explores how the depiction of African wildlife, including in Hollywood films for nearly 2 centuries, has instilled stereotypes about the continent.
What you find here are artistic installations. And artistic installations are, in a way, putting things together in such a way that they were never seen that way before. So you create a greater impact because it's not just putting things together in a way that everybody knows they should go together. It's putting things together in an imaginative, creative way that still has an impact and challenges the viewer in all sorts of ways.
Ballon is an American who has lived and worked in Africa for more than 40 years. During his travels in that time, he collected many items from metal scrapyards, hunting farms, pawn shops and roadsides. He used all that to put together this exhibition that he hopes will spark conversations about how humans relate to nature and animals.
I think it makes people think. Sometimes it makes us uncomfortable to think about this relationship we have with animals, and it definitely does. I think people will walk away from here thinking about their relationship with animals and how they feel about conservation and hunting and things like that.
There are a lot of people, who grew up in the cities in Africa and other places in the world who have no relationship to nature. They spend their lives in a city. They don't hardly know what a tree looks like anymore. Their whole life is virtual. And if they don't have the means to look at things virtually, then it's living day by day, but they have no relationship to nature itself. So I think this exhibition also wanted to also make people familiar that there is a natural world out there and there is a crisis going on.
Some of the biggest threats to wildlife include illegal wildlife trade, ecotourism, pollution and climate change. As a result, Africa's forests, rivers, animals and land continues to disappear. Ballon says this is nature's way at getting back at humans, and he hopes this exhibition will serve as a wake-up call.
After so many delays and setbacks, DC's The Flash is finally speeding into theaters. And in this film, the pacey superhero also makes some quick dashes down memory lane.
Ezra Miller plays Barry Allen, aka The Flash, in DC Comics' latest hit.
I love you! Thank you!
Barry has to travel back in time to stop his mother's death, but his attempt creates an alternate reality without superheroes. To save the future, he must defeat General Zod, but to do so, he seeks help from his younger self and other DC heroes.
I can save people.
For its director, Andy Muschietti, introducing the idea of the multiverse was quite exciting. This allowed him to include multiple versions of characters and acknowledge past film franchises based on DC Comics as alternate universes. And that's how Michael Keaton got involved.
We all got very excited about the prospect of having Michael Keaton come back after 30 years of not knowing what Batman was up to. And the multiverse allowed this to happen. We can combine the existing characters, the existing universe with something that seemed to have been buried in the past.
But Muschietti also felt he had to pay tribute to one of the greatest time-traveling movies of all time, and especially actor Eric Stoltz, who was meant to play Marty McFly before Michael J. Fox got the role.
Back to the Future is a movie that everyone loves, and when you're making a time travel movie like this, and you have like space for some levity, why not bring it up? Eric Stoltz, an actor that I love so much, and that some people might think that it was sort of an injustice that what happened in Back to the Future back in the day. So this is my way of saying that somewhere in the world, somewhere in this multiverse, there is a version of this movie where Eric Stoltz plays Marty McFly.
The film has received mixed to positive reviews from critics. It's been praised for its action scenes and performances, but criticised for its CGI, though it's still been called one of the best DC movies in recent years.
Hundreds of treasures collected by Spanish monarchs are set to go on display later this month at a new museum in Madrid. The collection spans over 5 centuries and includes paintings, tapestries, furniture, and royal carriages.
The Royal Collections Gallery holds 650 works of art that once belonged to Spanish royals. Most of the works will be on show for the first time, and some were just collecting dust at historic sites across Spain.
There are works that come from palaces or monasteries, and here we promote another way of looking at them. But there are other works, such as the White Horse of Velázquez or the Caravaggio, that were not kept hidden inside the palace, but at the same time, they weren't part of the tours for visitors to the royal palace either.
Although the number of items on display is quite high, there is so much more to see. The museum has developed a system to bring even more national treasures on display.
A third of the works is going to rotate every year and a half, more or less. Because the idea is to show all the national heritage we have, we can put the restored works on display and then they can go back to their original places.
The collection offers a wide range of items. Stunning art by Italian masters Caravaggio and Tintoretto stand next to Francisco de Goya's depiction of historic upheavals. Another significant item is the very first edition of Don Quixote. And Spain's first female sculptor, Lisa Roldan's work, is also at the museum. The collection shows the diversity, richness, and quality of what Spanish monarchs collected over a vast stretch of time.
The Vatican Museum has added 2 new rooms to its exhibition route. One is a recreation of a historic pharmacy, and the other one is a collection of ceramics dating back to the Renaissance.
These blue and white glazed vases, better known as Majolica pottery, date back to the 17th century. They were once used by nuns in a pharmacy that operated inside the monastery of Santa Cecilia in Trastevere.
Undoubtedly, among the most interesting objects are the Majolica set of apothecary items, which you can see behind me. This is the cobalt blue painted Majolica collection with the names of the medicine inscribed on the front of the vases. Then there is the complete series of water jars, which are the larger ones you can see on the bottom shelf, and some on the top. Also the complete series of syrup jars.
This ancient apothecary is one of the most complete in Italy. In 1936, the entire collection was transferred to the Vatican Apostolic for preservation, and some 60 years later, it found its way to the Vatican museums.
This transfer froze the pharmacy in time, so much so that we find containers, crockery, glassware, objects from the first decades of the 17th century, and objects from the first decades of the 20th century.
A door inside the pharmacy leads to a second room called the Hall of Ceramics. It's the first ever display of the Vatican's entire collection of medieval and modern ceramics. It holds items excavated from St. Peter's Square, as well as floors painted by Raphael.
What we have behind me is one of the most probably empathic collection, the Renaissance collection of dishes and ceramics. But there is much more telling about the different aspects of the society, of the Italian society through these 10 centuries of life. Floors of the loggia of Raphael with the design of Raphael, floor of with incredible ceramics of the Borgia apartment.
The Vatican may be the smallest country in the world, but these artifacts are now a part of quite a large and permanent collection. And it also happens to be one of the most significant on display in Italy.
Archaeologists in Egypt have unearthed 2 workshops and tombs near Cairo. These are the newest discoveries at the Saqqara necropolis, a UNESCO World Heritage Site that's also home to more than a dozen pyramids.
2 human and animal embalming shops, along with 2 tombs dating back to 4th century BC, are the newest discoveries in Saqqara. The workshops especially are significant.
This is the first time we discovered embalming workshops here. All the previous embalming workshops were in Giza, so this is an important discovery.
One of the tombs belonged to a priest who served the 5th dynasty of the Egyptian kingdom 4,500 years ago. The decorations in the tomb are a record of everyday life at the time.
The paintings and inscription of the tomb are so amazing. They represent the religious and everyday life. We can see scenes of agriculture, harvesting, grazing, sacrificial slaughtering and ranching. All of those scenes are in the tomb.
In recent years, Egypt has heavily promoted its archaeological findings on the international stage. The government aims to attract more tourists and revive the industry, which has suffered since the political turmoil of 2011.
With 2 hit albums, 1963 was the year of the Beatles. But to win over the international market, they first had to reach the other side of the pond. In February that year, they released their first US single, and it was already a sign of much bigger things to come.
Beatlemania was alive and kicking in 1963 England. That year, the albums Please Please Me and With the Beatles came out. Both hit big. However, the band knew that to claim worldwide stardom, it had to get hold of the US market.
There are rumors around that this is Britain's revenge for the Boston Tea Party. 3,000 screaming teenagers are at New York's Kennedy Airport to greet, you guessed it, the Beatles.
And in February 1963, Please Please Me, the single, came out in the States.
Harmony unmistakably diatonic. Others say it's pandiatomic.
John Lennon later said that with it, he attempted to write a song, like famous American singer Roy Orbison, and that the band kept it simple in the hopes of producing a big hit. The track became the Beatles' first UK chart topper. In the US, however, it didn't have the same performance. But the Liverpudlians didn't want to wait until they reached #1 spot in America. And eventually, the Please Please Me single would be re-released on the eve of their 1964 Ed Sullivan appearances. That helped. According to news outlets, by the time the Beatles arrived in New York, the British invasion had well and truly begun. The Sullivan Show episodes became one of the most watched broadcasts in history, and the Beatles' performance of Please Please Me on the show is cited as the reason why it reached number 3 at the charts. The band's New York visit is today regarded as the modern world's Big Bang that set the Beatles as cultural trendsetters. And Please Please Me is an important step on that road to glory.
The Disney brand is now 100 years old. It's one of the most powerful multimedia establishments. And despite having been around for so long, the company seems to be only getting bigger.
The Walt Disney Company was established by brothers Walt and Roy in 1923. The idea from the get-go was to create an entertainment empire. Thanks to Mickey Mouse, that dream was realized. That success was followed by feature-length animation and live-action films. Then came the theme parks in the 1950s. Today, there are about 36 of them, as well as a number of resorts and cruise lines. These assets bring the company its biggest cash. Disney World is dubbed the globe's most popular theme park. It attracts more than 20 million visitors each year. Today, Disney is described as a $160 billion entertainment giant. It owns or co-owns more than 200 companies, including ABC and the History Channel. The famous Marvel, Star Wars, Pixar franchises are some of the major moneymakers in its media catalog. Author Marcy Carricker Smothers says, Walt is a gift that keeps on giving, and reminds it was all started by a man with no money and big dreams. Well, the no money bit has changed. Last year, the company made a net income of $3.19 billion. And critics say the mammoth success comes from creativity and innovation. They explain the company's ability to appeal to all audiences, and its interactive attractions keep Disney's dreams relevant, even after 100 years.
That's it for this episode of Showcase. I'm Esra Drust from me and the whole team here in Istanbul. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.